Rob Dube, welcome. Nice to see you.
Ken, what a pleasure it is to be with you today. I'm so excited. Thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it.
Of course, love your energy and I love your work, and I can't wait to hear
Uh,
and for our audience to hear more about it. But before we dive into that, I know now your primary work is the 10 disciplines for managing and maximizing your energy. You have a
yes.
long list of business achievements before that. Where did this all start from, and how did you end up where you're at now?
Well, listen, by far my greatest business achievement was selling blow pop lollipops out of my locker with my best friend in high school. Like, come on.
How
It
did
was
that
like
do?
it was amazing. It
Yeah.
was the best product. Like, there was no sales that were needed because everyone was just flocking to the lockers, and we'd buy them for a nickel and resell them for a quarter. So that's pretty darn good margins.
It's
And
really
we were
good.
having a blast. I mean, everyone loved the product. There was never a problem with it. And that just sparked our entrepreneurial bug. And from there, we were always doing some sort of something in high school and college. And the two of us, when we graduated college in 1991, we started a company that we are still owners of called Image One, which is a
Okay.
document imaging company. And I think it's been around now 91. So about 32 years, I think.
Wow. So you guys are still best friends? When did you meet?
We met in grade school, and yes, we're still best friends. Can you believe that, being business partners for all those
Wow.
years?
I
It
think
took
it
a
says
lot of
a
work.
I think it says a lot about both of you. I mean, I think
Thank
anytime
you.
I was just thinking about this. My wife took a little retreat. She's got this group of girls that she grew up with, and I've been married for coming up on 36 years. And some of these friends she's known longer than me. They since like seventh grade and stuff like that. And um, I might get I don't know. I think it just says something about a person's character, right? To be able to kind of
Oh,
work through relationships and maintain relationships that are that long. I think it says great things
yeah.
about both people.
Well, thank you for that. And wasn't always easy. And but we, even at that young age, we kind of made a vow to each other, which was no matter what, our friendship needed to come first. And it didn't always show up that way, but we always came back to it when things were really hard. Just that foundation. Hey, our friendship isn't worth all this. And then
Right.
that would sort of bring some things in perspective, and we'd get back on track.
In your business ventures, have you guys had to, because what I've felt sometimes when there's like a co-CEO or a co-founder, no matter how well everybody gets along, sometimes it's got to be like, I handle this and you handle this, right? Because a tie, it doesn't really work in most decision making processes,
Right,
right?
right.
So how have you
Mhm.
guys handled that through the years? Do you guys have does someone handle sales and someone handle admin, or like how does that work?
Yeah. So just to start where we're at today, the two of us are actually uh, the owners of the company. We sit in the owner's box and on the board, and so we have a CEO who's running the
Sure,
company now.
sure.
But up until that time, we spent a lot of time just understanding what our strengths and weaknesses were and getting really clear and respectful of each other's strengths and weaknesses, and just kind of dividing and conquering, so to speak. So that's how it worked well for us. We both have a visionary aspect, and they're very different. So we would have to obviously collaborate and make sure that we were always in our sweet spot, and then have a lot of respect for each other and sort of get out of each other's way and let us do, when we're in our sweet spot, let us do our thing.
I mean, it's really evolved, and obviously you guys have evolved together, but it's evolved, and it's kind of, I don't want to say lucky because maybe you guys recognized something in each other early on, but it sounds like you both have, if you're both visionaries and you're both business people, then I'm guessing you both probably in some way classify yourself as entrepreneurs. And that's usually a difficult combo to put two entrepreneurs in a situation together. It's usually, an entrepreneur with a manager leader, or an entrepreneur with an artist, like someone that's great at creating the
Yeah.
product or whatever, right? But it sounds like you guys are probably both lean a little heavier towards entrepreneurial, but maybe just have such a strong sense of relationship and connection that you were able to still keep that together.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think we're both partner people. So I
Right.
think that works well. and knowing that you have somebody by your side. And of course, we had this long relationship, which was such a strong foundation of trust. So simple things just like money,
Mhm.
there was never concerns about what one or the other was doing when it came to money. There was just always, and still is, a great deal of trust. And so that foundation really helped us as we moved through the years.
No, that's awesome. Well, so when did you guys did say you guys started the company in 91? So you were
Yes.
fresh out of college? Like you literally just,
Yes. Fresh out of college,
and
literally.
and you still own it. So how many years were you guys actively in the business? When did you hand it off to CEO?
We completed a succession plan just about 2 years ago now.
Okay, okay. So you were in it
Yeah.
for a while, 30 years ish.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. We did sell it in 2004 to a public company, and we stayed on and we ran it for 18 months. And then they actually sold it back to us at that time in 2006.
I'm sure
So
that
there was
worked out.
kind of like
That always works out pretty well
it
usually.
worked out. It was very fortunate and lucky. I wish, as you mentioned, I wish I could say there was some sort of grand plan scheme or something that we're so
Right.
smart, but it's just the way it worked out. And yes, it was advantageous, and it did give us an opportunity to see what the big corporate world was all about, which we knew very quickly we weren't made for that. And then it also gave us an opportunity to think a little bit differently about how we might run the company moving forward from 2006 on. And we put a great emphasis on our culture from that point on. Very, very high, much stronger emphasis than before.
Was that the time frame that you started getting more into mindfulness and meditation, or did that come before? And how did that work its
Yeah.
way into your life, both business and and personal?
Yeah. Yeah, so I had, quite a number of challenges growing up that really stuck with me. And as it came in, as I, got into business partnership with my best friend, and then of course married, you and I were speaking about that, married in my early 20s, had kids early, had a lot of stress and anxiety. And went through a lot of self-discovery through different types of therapies and different types of other things. And in addition to that, I found mindfulness meditation to be very useful, especially around 2004 when we sold, which, from the outside, I think most people look at that as a celebration. And when you sell your business, and to a certain extent, it can be and is, but it can also bring up, especially in my case, new types of anxieties and stresses. And so I found mindfulness meditation to be very useful at that time. And it's been a practice of mine ever since.
Well, it's funny because you sold. I didn't even realize this when I heard you on a different podcast. So I'm guessing, were you around 30 years old, 32 years old when you guys
Mm-hmm.
sold?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so at almost the exact same age, almost the exact same situation. I sold my first company also
Is
to a
that
Fortune,
right?
yeah, to a Fortune
No
500 company,
kidding.
and it was
Wow.
and it was a really overall good thing. I mean, they treated me right, and I ended up working for them for a long time. But um, yeah, I can definitely relate to the stress and anxiety, and I've the emotions, positive and negative, they weren't all negative, right? But it's an
Right.
emotional roller coaster for sure. um, and a lot of wounds I feel like come up in times like that, right?
Yes.
Old wounds, money wounds. I don't like the term imposter syndrome, but some of that. Do I belong here? How do
Absolutely.
I come into this
Yes.
multi-billion-dollar company now as a leader when all I've ever done is sell blow pops and start my own company, right? So,
Yes.
um,
Thank you. So
yeah,
great.
yeah. So yeah. You're in my mind. I'm going through memory lane myself right now. So,
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that. That's really well said. And I've never actually heard anybody say it that way. And so I appreciate that.
well, and then it
Really
sounds
good.
like even though it worked out really well, it sounds like it was also before you get to a point where where you buy your company back from another company. I'm guessing you bought it back because things weren't going that well under the parent company. I'm guessing, right? And so you're
No,
dealing
actually,
with the
believe
stress
it
of
or
that.
not, it wasn't going poorly.
Okay.
They had an executive, like the C-suite or whatever you want to call it, they had a big shakeup and a new
Okay.
CEO came in, and we went and met with the new person, and very quickly he was kind of redoing the strategy, and this division just wasn't part of the strategy, and he wanted off the balance sheet ASAP. It was like a
Cool.
2-month process, and they were free of it, and we had it back.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah,
So, what did you learn back then? How did it help you? And what was the first catalyst? Because did you say therapy was part of that as well? I don't remember if you
definitely.
said that. Okay.
Yeah, that was definitely part of it.
Yeah. So
Many,
tell
many
me how that.
years of therapy with my, talk therapy with myself, my wife. She was kind enough to come along on the journey with me. And a lot of spiritual work, different types of all different types of things, different modalities, as I like to say, and then just grounding. I think the mindfulness practice for me, I really got interested in the mindfulness based stress reduction program, because that was a great entry point to me, because I really didn't want it to have any sort of connection to religion or anything, because I wasn't interested in something like that. And there was a lot of data around why it was useful for people all these years ago. People don't think so much about that anymore nowadays. But back then, these were all the kind of boxes I felt like I needed to check. And one thing led to another, and I just found it to be very useful for me. And I still maintain a very strong daily practice.
How did that turn into the 10 disciplines, or how and when? I guess.
Yeah. So actually, the 10 disciplines were created by my business partner and my very dear friend, Gino Wickman.
Okay.
And for those that aren't familiar with Gino, he has a best-selling business book called Traction, and he is the creator of the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or many
Oh,
people
EOS. Yeah.
refer to it EOS. Yep.
Okay.
And so we were one of his first clients over 20 years ago, and the two of us struck up a very close friendship, and we would meet up often outside of work. And I was just fascinated with how he was kind of structuring his work life and non-work life. And so I started to glean off of all these things he was doing. Fast forward many years later, he actually took this kind of operating system for his life and documented them and created the 10 disciplines for managing and maximizing your energy. And it's all about energy management. And the two of us got talking, and one thing led to another, and we created a program to teach this to the world, our main focus being driven visionary entrepreneurs.
So I may have. So I jumped quite a ways from you getting
It's
help in
okay.
your own kind of some of
Yeah.
your challenges, but it does seem like that's what led you there, right? Were your maybe your own some of the
Thank you for
personal
that.
things that you went through?
Yes. And so there's the context in terms of what the 10 disciplines, how that got created. And, one of the benefits to having something like the 10 disciplines in your life, I like to kind of share it in this way. It's important that we create a foundation in our life that opens up space, freedom in our mind and time, so we can do the inside work. Otherwise, we're just on a treadmill running from thing to thing, and usually going after outside successes, or, we're running after the outside, how things look to others on the outside and what we think is going to fulfill us. And we know at our
Right,
core, we know no matter what we get or have, it never is a lasting fulfillment. It's all fleeting.
right.
And so having that foundation is important. So how I like to share it is, imagine an empty piece of land. And you mentioned you're in New York, so you can see this, every day when you walk outside on the streets. Empty piece of land. They're going to put a skyscraper on there. You are the skyscraper. But before they do that, they built a quite extensive foundation. It takes a lot of time, a lot of patience, and a lot of thoughtfulness. And there's much that goes into it, because that skyscraper's got to be up there for hundreds of years, and it's got to support thousands of people coming in and out each and every day. And that's the type of foundation we want to have in our life, because we're the skyscraper, and we're
Sure.
here to make great impact in this life. Doesn't mean we need to change the world. It just means it could be as simple as just how we show up each and every day with those around us, the person at the coffee shop, simple stuff like that. But it also can mean changing the world. But you are a skyscraper, and we want to make sure you have a strong foundation in your life to do that inner work.
So what were you feeling, I guess, in kind of the late 90s, early 2000s when a lot of this was going on with you? What were you feeling and how did you establish that foundation for yourself?
So it's just overwhelmed, a great deal of anxiety and stress, and just an uncontrollable mind that just would never stop.
Mm-hmm.
And in the mindfulness meditation practice was useful because if you use that kind of idea, some of you or some of your listeners may have heard or seen it before, where you take a jar and there's some sand and water in it, and you have a cap, you shake it up, and the sand's floating around and you can't see through it. That's my mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's just nonstop. But when I sit and allow things to settle, the water becomes clear, and that creates clarity in my life. And so in my meditation practice, that is my hope, which I'm still a beginner. It's been 20 years, but I'm still a beginner, and I'll always be working on it, just being with my thoughts, allowing them to, as they may say, float by like clouds in the sky. I'm not trying to solve anything during this time, allowing things to settle, and coming to the present moment, which is the realization that that is all I have, is the present moment. The past is over and I can't control the future. There's nothing I could do at this moment. So embrace it and be grateful for it.
Yeah, I think I was listening to you on another podcast and you were on this topic and I really was thinking about that. I'm like, the future, like you're saying, hasn't happened. And so we're either excited, which is great. I mean, at least if you're going to look forward to the future, being excited is a good way to look at it, right? Or we're not, we're fearful. We're usually one of those two things. But either way, we're trying to predict something that hasn't happened yet, right? Or we're just constantly replaying loops of what's happened in the past. And that generally isn't, again, unless you've been through a lot of training, that loop that's playing generally isn't all the good stuff, right? It's usually
That is
like
right.
the stuff that I did wrong, what I could have done differently in this relationship and this business deal and whatever. And in the meantime, all the things you can control are right in front of you, but you're not seeing them, right? Or I don't even want to say control, but at least the things you could have an impact on today, right?
Yeah, you're so right. You're so right. So, I mean, we're all wired the same way. We tend to have minds that do go towards fear. That if you break down what's going on, a lot of the times when you start peeling back the layers, it all comes to fear.
Yes.
And so it's just our ability to use a practice like meditation, and there are other things people could do as well, that brings some perspective into our life. And ultimately, we're all wanting the same thing: some level of peace and happiness.
Yes. There's a guy that a good friend of mine actually, and he's been on the podcast a couple of times, but I think you'd really like him. His name's Tommy Rosen, and he's a recovery guy. It would be his thing, a recovery coach, and has a community that's based in recovery. But the principles of it are exactly what we're talking about. It's everybody's on this journey to find peace, and yet in the addiction community and even in the non-addiction community, we tend to engage in patterns of belief and behavior that don't serve us. So that can be very clear, like with an alcoholic, they continue to drink even though that's no longer serving them.
Right.
But for the kind of top 5 addictions out there, and you go, well, what about just the thought patterns that you were having in the late 90s, early 2000s, right? The anxiety, the over and over again, the obsessive thinking, the loop over and over again, that is addictive thinking as well. It's the same vibration, right?
That's right.
And so so I find that work in recovery is completely transferable, just as human beings, because I think we're all wired towards it, whether that's whether we've ever stuck a needle in our arm or not, which I haven't, luckily, but it's the same thing, right? It's the
It
obsessive
is.
social media, it's the obsessive thoughts, obsessions with electronics, obsession with work, all of it. And so when you were going through all that, because I know it sounds like you mentioned you tried a lot of different modalities, but it seems like throughout your life or throughout at least the last 25 plus years, has meditation really been the foundation of that for you?
It absolutely has. It
Yeah.
absolutely has. And, it's just every time, my practice is 2 times per day. And it's just a time to begin again, just reset. And so first thing in the morning, right before I go to bed in the evening, it's just a time to begin again, reset.
And you do what, 30 minutes each time? I know you're a little
In the
more involved at
morning,
this, but
I do 45 minutes, and in
okay.
the evening, I do 20.
And what type do you do? Do you do like breath work, or what do you do?
Yeah. So it's basically just focusing on my breath. That's sort of the ground, the reference point for me. And then you can expand beyond it if your eyes are open, and you can bring awareness in a gentle way to what you're kind of peripherally seeing on the outside. So you are aware that you are aware. And that's very useful. I might be going a little bit too
No,
far
no, I get
here
it. I get
for
it.
beginners, not maybe for you, but but you're aware that you are aware, which helps sort of bring you back to the present moment as opposed to being off in the future or in the past, which, as you so eloquently mentioned earlier, is usually where we're spending our time.
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges with meditation, at least for me, before I had done it, is this perception that I have to sit in some uncomfortable position, and my job, because again, we're so outcome based, right? Like, if you're playing basketball, the goal is to get the ball in the hoop. And if you're meditating, the idea is to be free of thought, right? And it's like we're never free of thought, right? And so I think as soon as I started really learning that, I had some really good advisors and teachers and stuff where it was
Mhm.
um, I and I really use this in my I think try to use this in my awakened life now too with my thoughts, which is instead of fighting with my brain or my thoughts, I don't want to fight it, and I don't want to engage it. I guess, and I don't know. I think I might have gotten this term from somebody, but I'll dance with it. You know what I mean? Like, oh, okay, hey, thought, you're here. What's happening? Great. Okay, I don't really need you right now. Like, you can just
Good.
move along. And I think I remember that Headspace app, um, where he talks about it like moving cars on a freeway, where
Mm-hmm.
you can't get
That's
rid of
good.
the cars, but maybe you can watch them pass and
Yeah.
look at that and let it go by and just kind of recognize when you're too engaged. But again, I think the very reason we need the meditation is sometimes I think the thing that keeps us away from it, which is I got to do it right. I got to do it good. I got to nail it.
Yeah.
And it's like there's no such thing, I don't think, as a high score.
No, there is not. So thank you for that. That's one that is important to demystify. Everybody that I come into contact that are beginners, they're frustrated because they're trying to clear their mind. And reality is you will not clear your mind if you're leading a conventional life. That's just not going to happen.
Right.
And so just free yourself of that. And I love your examples with the cars and the dancing. Some people say invite them to the table.
Hmm.
All your emotions are at the table with you, and they're all serving a purpose there. And
Love
um,
that.
and and I think you made another really important point, which is the real work begins when you're not meditating, and that's where you bring that practice into real life. And there's that great quote from Viktor Frankl, there's that moment between stimulus and response, and then it goes on from there. But if you can just imagine that moment between stimulus and response, that's your millisecond to show up in the right way, in the right situation.
Yes.
And that serves you and it serves those around you. And so we're just always ever practicing that. And as you do this more and more, you can begin to take your practice of mindfulness away from your seat or your meditation cushion or however you do it, and you start to incorporate this in your movements and the way you notice things in life. Your mind just slows down a titch. It's not like it's slow motion, but it starts to slow down just a titch, and you see things and notice things in a different way. And that is, again, quite useful in our interactions with each other, because we don't get so caught up in the moment, in our ego, in wanting to be right, or putting
Yeah.
a stake in the ground, and all the things that we all, that we all deal with each and every day.
Yeah, I think it's the difference between responding versus reacting, right? And I think that it's something I've definitely had to learn myself, and as I've learned it, it's made life like so much better because a lot less having to come back and say I'm sorry. Not that I don't make mistakes, but at least the ones where you're like,
Yeah.
oh God, I can't believe I said that, or I really
Yeah.
overreacted, or I didn't have all the information, or whatever it might be. And going back to some of the teachings that I had from Tommy, what we talk about is being connected with and living from consciousness, right? And I think that I love the concept of consciousness for so many reasons because like you, I didn't really want anything that was rooted in religion. That was sort of like, no, I don't want that. So in looking at even like AA or something like that, where they start with like, you will surrender to God and admit that, and it's like the actual steps of like a 12-step program are a really good self-improvement program that have really uninviting language to most of us. But if you replaced a lot of that language, which is what he did, with consciousness, so instead of God, it's like, hey, just accept that this is bigger than you and you might need some universal help. And maybe connecting with consciousness would be a better way to live your life. And maybe
Yeah.
moving forward, checking in with consciousness is a good way. So to me, what I try to get my head through this practice of both recovery, meditation, and things like that was, am I acting in a way that's connected with consciousness today, period? Even in, and I don't always, obviously, but sometimes I can catch myself in the moment and go, is this the way I really want to react? Is this a
Yeah.
connected way to react? Or can I just take, in that Viktor Frankl quote, can I just take that pause that's in the middle? It's in that pause, it's in that breath, that's that millisecond where you just go, maybe I can have a thoughtful response to this situation instead of a reactive one.
Right. Yeah, and it's so much faster even than just how you said it.
Yeah,
That comes from, time and patience and practice. There's some things that kind of just came up for me in what you were saying. And if it's okay, I'll
of
just
course,
kind of share.
please. Yeah,
First of all, you made this, you said this about, I don't always show up that way. And I think it's important to recognize that, especially for the perfectionists amongst us, the hard drivers, the wantings, those that want to always, succeed even at how they are. And what I always like to encourage is, bring a sense of gentleness to yourself and some warmth, because you will never meet the standards that you're seeking. And so by just allowing yourself to be imperfect, you will be able to move forward with so much more ease. And so please consider that, to everybody who's listening, in anything that you're doing, because you can really start to bring that forward. And when you're not, which is the next, which is what I want to segue to next, which is about attachment. So now you're not attached anymore to that conversation where you didn't show up as your best and you wish you would have, and you think you could have, and et cetera, et cetera. That could be something with your significant other or a business meeting or whatever, anything in between, something you said to your kids. Let it go. Just,
right.
just let it go. Have trust that you have the wisdom to be better next time. especially when you are incorporating these kinds of thought processes that you're sharing. Um, and then also, I think life can be a bit more easeful when we aren't attached to future outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
And let's face it, business, whatever roles you're in, you've got goals, you have expectations, and you want to meet them. And it causes a great deal of angst and frustration when you don't. And what I'm not suggesting you do is, don't stop being driven. You are driven, and please continue to be so, because you're going to make a difference in the world because of it.
Mm-hmm.
But don't attach yourself to all the outcomes. Do your best work, move towards whatever it is you think you want, that you think is important. And whether you get there or not, if you can say, I made my best effort, then move forward. If you didn't make your best effort, use the wisdom, move forward, but don't attach yourself to it. So I highly encourage that. One of the things we talk about with the 10 disciplines, we actually start with 10-year thinking. And we have people, think 10 years into the future and imagine what their life might look like, or
Mm-hmm.
really ideally how they'd like it to look like. And that could sound sort of goal oriented, but we're very clear in saying this is not a goal. This is just a picture of what you want your life to look like. Once you have that in mind, it begins to inform your actions today. And that's what we're really focused on. But we're not actually focused on you having your life in the future. We're focused on, because the future isn't here. What is here is this moment. But if you have this, our minds are so creative, we can see in some ways what we want out of the future. So when we come back to the present moment, we begin to act in a way that moves us towards what that 10-year time frame looks like, or whatever it is. Some people can't do 10, so we do 5. Some people 10's not long enough. They do 20 or 50. Even some people do 100 nowadays. So, and that's thinking beyond you when you're doing 100.
Yes.
So just thinking about those actions is so powerful. So don't be so attached, would be something I would ask your listeners to consider.
I love this, and I really feel like, and it's funny, I'll have to keep my comments brief because I feel like we could talk for a few minutes on every one of the 10, but
right.
but like on this one, it's that balance of going, and for me anyway, I don't want to put this on anyone else, but I love what you're saying, but I also think it's going to be important for me because I'm not going to be driven towards, at this point, a financial number or necessarily stuff. And so immediately when you went to this, I started thinking about how do I want to feel? Who do I want to be around? What do I want to have accomplished maybe? And again, I'm not talking about from stacks of things, but maybe from an impact standpoint, right? And, mm-hmm. and maybe how do I want to spend my days, right? During that time, 10 years from now. And so,
yep.
So I think about that. But then to your other point, the preface that you kind of made on that was, but I also know that that's a benchmark. That's a peg that I'm in 2023, I'm putting out there for 2033. And that life has all kinds of surprises and changes and twists and turns. So I'm not hanging my self-worth on it or my identity necessarily on it. It's just a peg and it's going to get moved. And it might be even
right.
better. Tony Robbins has this saying, I'm a trainer with Tony, and he has this saying that he says most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and severely underestimate what they can do in 10.
10 years, yeah.
So we always have these sort of weak, if you will, like 10-year visions, but in the next year we're like, I'm going to double the size of my business, every year. And it's like, then you don't, and you're disappointed, right? So awesome. What's the second one? Where does this?
Well, the second one is take time off. And this is where we encourage people to take 130 days off and not think about work the entire time.
Oh
and, I was just about to say, most people's reaction is something like what you said. And where I like to kind of present the challenge to these driven people, because driven people love challenges, is this idea that, be free from your email and checking in. And, a lot of people, my favorite is, well, that's the time I catch up on my business reading. And I say, no, it's not the time, actually. This is the time where I just want you to let go and experience the world in a way that you haven't experienced it before. And when you do that, you begin to free your mind from everything that was going on and all the new and wonderful ideas that you would get from the next business book or industry magazine or online, whatever. What we want to do is free up your mind. Give yourself some time to rejuvenate your mind and your body too. And what you're going to notice is you're going to come back to to your work life, and you are going to be more energized, and you will have better ideas, solutions to problems, game-changing, whatever it is all that stuff. But you're stuffing it down because you're keeping yourself so busy all the time. Mm-hmm. And I know you're passionate about your work, and you could do it all day long, and you just love every second of it. But I want to encourage you, open yourself up to the rest of life. You're missing out. You are missing out. And there's such value in clearing your mind of all of it, because again, you come back with you see things in a different way. You hear things in a different way. You feel things in a different way. It is incredibly powerful. So that is our passionate plea.
This is so
as you go off to vacation, Ken.
Exactly. We were just talking about this before we hit record, but in a few hours, our family will be here, and then tomorrow morning we're leaving for Jamaica for 5 days. So this is great advice for me, because I am somebody that sometimes has trouble letting stuff go. I've been at a stage in life where the pendulum had swung very heavy to being kind of overworking in my corporate days, to maybe not working enough afterwards, to now working a ton the last 2 years. But I'd probably fall into that super passionate, like we created a new company from our old company that will probably make the Inc. 5000 this year in only 2 years time from starting it. And so
amazing.
Yeah, so there's that combination of but there's so much opportunity right in front of us, right? Because there really is. It's just coming at us pretty fast. And but I also do recognize, that my wife and I were just talking about it. It's are we going to do takeout again, tonight? Because we've just been doing that a lot lately, because she's working in the business as well. And I think it's okay at times to be intentionally out of balance, but
yes,
that's not a long-term, year after year after year great plan, probably.
Exactly. As long as you know for how long and why, then go for it. I get it. If you have a 2-year-old company that's growing that fast, it needs attention. Understood. As long as you know for how long and why, that makes all the difference in the world. Ultimately, that's where we want to get you.
Well, I still think I can take my 5 days, right, and actually unplug, or maybe keep it to 20 minutes of checking our IT status board or something, and not,
I love it,
not hours, right? So, okay, what's number 3?
Know thyself. And this is where we really want you to be yourself 100% of the time, 24/7, 365, because you're so unique. You're special. And what we do in life, we've gotten conditioned to kind of fitting in like chameleons. And that's not where we show up as our true self. And we've lost our true self. So many of us in our program, we actually have people create a who am I statement. And it's amazing to see how many people struggle with it. They have a hard time really thinking wait a second, who am I? What just happened? I'm 35, 40, 50 years old. Some of our clients are 70, and they're like, what just happened? My life blinked and I don't even know who I am. So, we want to bring you back to you, your true self, and we want you to show up that way. And so that's what that's all about. And that can go deep, 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 deep. And we take it deep, but you and I, again, that's a whole nother hour and a half conversation that we could have.
And what about number 4?
So 4 is be still. And you and I talked a lot about that. That's around just sitting in silence for 30 minutes every day. And so I won't do anything on that. And the fifth one is know your 100%. And this is where we encourage you to decide on and commit to the perfect number of hours per week and weeks per year that you're going to deliver your value to the world. Because once you get to know thyself and you get really clear about, your strengths and weaknesses and your sweet spot, your unique ability, whatever it is, whatever term you want to use, that's where you start to make impact. So if your energy is best suited, and when I say energy, I'm not talking physical, I'm talking like where your energy is exuding from you, the creativity and the best work. If out of a 40 to 70 hour work week that you might be doing now, 20 is where you are in your unique ability, that is your 100%. Right. And so get really clear on that and protect it. Build a gigantic wall around it. Tell your team members, if you have, people that work for you or with you or administrative assistant, protect your boundaries during that time. And that is how you are going to be able to bring the greatest value to your organization or to the world.
Can I ask you, I guess I'm asking for permission in a way. If I want your thought or your opinion on this. But so in this last 2 years, building the business up from we're in the talent acquisition space for leadership. So we place leaders with other companies, and of course with COVID, that became a non-existent business all of a sudden. I mean, not just a slowdown, but like faucet turned off, right? So we took the time, kind of the great reset, not to be cliche, but it was kind of perfect for us because we got to do a lot of this, right? Who are we really? What do we want to be in 10 years? Do we want to work together? Do we want to start a new company? Or do we want to do something completely different? I mean, we even thought about getting a license in real estate in New York and doing something completely different. Mm-hmm. And it was like, no, we want to do this, but we want to do it a little bit differently. So we rebranded the company, did everything different, blew up the website, did everything different. And started bringing people back. And as we did, the creativity that I had when I was younger really started coming back. The love for the work and wanting to come back. And in this process over the last couple of years, I would say about once every 2 weeks, I'll wake up from a dead sleep. I usually sleep really well. I have my Aura ring on. It even tells me I'm sleeping well, right? And I'll wake up at like 1 a.m. and I'll go, yeah, there's no chance I'm going back to sleep right now, right? Like there'll be like a download of like something I was trying to figure out from a system standpoint or a sales funnel standpoint or whatever it is. And the answer just kind of like appears there. And I used to just fight myself with like, I've got to go to sleep. And now I'm just like, no, it's fine. Like I'm pull out my iPad and start writing it down or a notepad or whatever it is. And again, if that became an every night thing or I wasn't getting adequate sleep, I think I'd be concerned. But right now, I'm just kind of going with it. What are your thoughts on that? Is that a little extreme or?
No, I mean, to your point, if it was an every day thing, yes, I would probably be concerned because there's stress and anxiety that's causing you to lose something that is just about maybe the most important thing potentially, which is sleep. And we all need it. And we all know that. But if it's happening from, now and again, then I love the way you're just you're not resisting it. You're not creating frustration around it. You're allowing it to be, you're getting up, you're jotting down some notes, maybe spending a little time. And that's allowing things to flow, allowing things to unfold naturally. And I think that's a wonderful thing that you're doing, as long as inside it's serving you well and it's not creating issues down the line. You're not kicking the can with your health. You're not, and it doesn't sound like you are, but to those listening, don't be mindful of convincing yourself around things that might be happening that where you could be going down a path where, you're going to have some challenges.
No, it's so important what you're saying. And it's like having an honest practice, right? Where it's like, are you saying that's just in flow because it's in flow? I mean, or do I know when I'm actually being obsessive, right? Or something like that.
There you go. There you go.
Okay, what's number 6?
So 6 is say no often.
Right.
And,
Love it.
if we think about the first five, it's just say no to anything that doesn't fit into those first five. And so many of us have trouble saying no, and many of us are help oriented, and we want to do good things, but it goes back to protecting our boundaries and staying clear on the 20% of the stuff that we need to do that really makes the big difference, and saying no, unfortunately, to the 80% of things that often takes up a lot of our time, keeps us busy, which sometimes we think we might perceive as a good thing. I'm so busy, my calendar's full. I encourage you, your listeners, look at your calendar. Look at all the things you're doing and think about whether you should be saying yes or no to them. And really, I'm going to suggest that it's very possible that there's a good 80% of that stuff on there that at some point you really need to delegate off, so you're really working within your sweet spot. So
Yeah.
saying no. And my last point on this is it's not a negative. It doesn't mean you're better than people or anything like that. You can do it quite gracefully. You can always be of service. Take 5 minutes to say no, but let me introduce you to this person. They might be helpful. Or no, I can't help you on that project, but next time, definitely ask me again. Maybe I'll have time. I'm not sure. You can always be graceful. So,
Yeah.
if there's ever a guilt factor in there, know that if you show up as a wonderful human, everyone understands.
Well, I can also tell you're a contribution guy, and so there's a way to let people down easy, right? Which is like with love and with like, hey, I want to be at my best for myself and for those around me, right? And
Exactly.
I can't do that by saying yes to every request. It's funny. I'm a coach in a large mastermind group, but what I do is I consult with them and I sit in on a couple of live calls a week and I do Q&A there. Well, in the meantime, lots of people, because there's hundreds of people in the group, they know who I am, they know how to find me, and can I get one-on-one time, or can you answer this question? And it's weekly. I'm super used to it. The responses are like, thanks so much for your question. I'm live every Tuesday and Thursday. Unfortunately, my typing skills, and this is true, are so poor that I just can't possibly do this right now. You know what I mean? But join me live, because then I can actually
That's
answer
so
your
good.
question in depth, and I keep
Exactly.
my guardrails then, but I'm not just saying like no or don't talk to me or anything. Because
Right.
I like you, I was that young entrepreneur, and I know what it's like when someone can give you advice or give you some help. So I think we want to be those people, but we got to do it within our guardrails.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
Cool.
So shall I keep going?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Number 7.
the next, don't do $25 an hour work, or these days, 25, 35, $40 an hour work. Never do anything that you could pay somebody $25 an hour to do. And so I always encourage people, make a list of all the things you're doing and then put a price next to it. Another fun exercise is to take your annual compensation and figure out the perfect number of hours per week that you're delivering your craft to the world, and divide it. And now you'll have your hourly rate. And when you look at your hourly rate, and then you look at some of these administrative tasks that you're doing, you'll see that there's going to be a huge difference. My favorite one is email, because most people say to me, I'm the only one that can do my email. No one else can do it. And I love that one. And so there's all kinds of ways to train very, very capable people that are super excited to answer your emails for you, clear out your emails, organize your emails, and so you are left with essentially 10 to 20% of the things that only really you can handle. So imagine simple math, 100 emails a day, you were looking at making some sort of action with, now you're doing 20. That's just a very simple example. Calendar, please stop doing your calendar. It's so you have more to give than your calendar, than scheduling meetings with people. I know there's wonderful tools now online. That's awesome. That's a good step in the right direction. But I really encourage you to have somebody who's protecting your boundaries, because those calendar tools still require your attention, because you have to kind of set up your boundaries and go in and change them at certain times, and et cetera. So there's another thing to consider. How about travel? That's one of my other favorites. No one understands my very particular ways I like to travel. I like a certain kind of seat. I like to use points. I only like this kind of hotel, so on and so forth. Somebody can help you with that. And by the way, they'll do way better job than you. way better.
Well,
And
because they're
they'll,
managing less tasks, right? So it's like just
that's right.
focus on it, and they'll get really good at it.
And they're so excited for you to have
Yeah.
an amazing experience. So they're going to go over the top where you're rushing. You're trying to.
Right.
So those are three quick and easy examples. And you nowadays it's so great because there are all these freelancers out there that you could hire for 10 hours a week if you needed to handle some of this stuff, or you could have a full-time person. You're going to get an ROI on that investment if it's a dollars and cents thing in your mind. I mean, I'm speaking from just pure human energy side, but if you want to ROI it, you get an ROI all like 5 times. And I'm just making that up, but give it a year and you're going to start getting a 5 times on your investment there.
I wanted to mention to you and to our listeners. So when we started the company and rebranded it in 2021, we started hiring overseas, and so not only can you do what you're talking about, but you can give people in other countries some pretty great opportunities. And so
It's
we
true.
have 7 people now in South Africa. We just opened an office down there for them to work at, a beautiful office. We have another
Amazing.
7 in Cebu in the Philippines, and so yeah, I mean, really, it's not limited to can I find an
You're
assistant
right.
that lives in my town, right? I mean, everything you just mentioned is electronic. It's not someone buying your groceries or cleaning your house, although those could be other things that you could outsource. But everything you just mentioned is all digital, right? It's all stuff people can do online.
You're right. You're right. That's
Yeah.
such a good point. It just shows you how interconnected we are all these days. It's amazing.
Oh, it's so cool. So
The
cool. So
next
what's
two are
number
so
8? Yeah.
simple. The next two are so simple yet so powerful. And I often have people say to me, how did I go 30 or 40 years in my business career and I wasn't doing this? So the first is prepare every night and just simply state it before your head hits the pillow each night. Document the next day's plan. What my hope for you is you'll just look at what you have going on tomorrow and you will cement it in your mind. And as you go off to sleep, then your subconscious starts doing the work. When you wake up, sometimes at 1 a.m., but hopefully, later in the morning,
Yeah. Yeah.
your mind's going to have some solutions to some of the problems you were dealing with. You're going to be better prepared for your meetings because you have clarity about what's going on. And that's going to provide you with greater energy that's going to exude from you. You're going to be thinking more clearly and you're not going to be reactive. And that's kind of the key. The next part to this is put everything in one place, which is having one place that you capture all your ideas, commitments that you make throughout the day, action items that, to-dos, so to speak, and promises that you make. And what we've noticed over the years in working with our clients is that they have lots of places that they put things. So they lose them. And it causes anxiety, it drains energy, and then they let people down, but they don't realize it. Oftentimes, their team members don't even let them know that they're letting them down. So they forget things. And so there's this whole thing that's going on that's causing anxiety and disappointment. And so what we encourage is just have this one place. I always like to say it's like connected at the hip. It's like on your belt or something. And it can be a legal pad. It could be on your phone. It could be, I use Remarkable. It's an electronic kind of legal pad thing. And that's always with me. And so I could jot down notes at any moment. And at the end of the day, you just disseminate everything. You put it in its right place, but everything is in one place and that will bring your anxiety down and you'll be more on top of things.
So to give our listeners just a little bit there. So I do something similar to Remarkable. I just do it on an iPad and basically just have like
Right.
I'm taking notes on what you're telling me right now on the 10 disciplines. And
Yep.
then I have a little hub called Notion, and Notion is such a cool landing spot for like notes. And I have links to every important document. It's literally like my brain, and it connects to my phone, to my computer. It all syncs. It's just beautiful. It's like the hub for all information, and then my assistant puts everything there, and she's even getting me the habit of training me on my own tool because I'll go, where's so and so? She's like, it's on Notion.
It's in Notion.
It's where, I keep telling you where
there's the one place. Yeah, nowadays it's so powerful, so you really have repositories where you can have everything, and when you have an assistant, which is amazing, and if that person and you're all doing it together, it just keeps you on top of everything.
So cool. What's the 10th and
The
final?
last one, grand finale.
Yeah.
It is be humble. Simply stated, view yourself as an equal to every person on the planet. And for most of your listeners, and I know I can tell from you, these are humble people at their core, for sure. But it's interesting when we do different types of exercises on humility with people, it can be quite thought provoking because there's subtleties that take place. A simple one that I always like to share is, in the hospitality business, if you go to a restaurant and you're hungry and you're in a rush and you're not getting served quickly enough, you start to get this big story going on about the server and the chef, and you're getting irritated and, oh, this person. Okay, now I just want you to check yourself. Are you coming from a place of humility? Are you viewing yourself as an equal to that person? Or are you in some ways being judgmental? That's how subtle it can be. And so that's just an everyday practice of checking in with yourself on that. And finally, we always like to say, we've never met somebody who is truly humble who doesn't express gratitude on a daily basis. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's a simple practice that most of us are very familiar with, yet we forget. I always ask people, are you expressing gratitude daily? And people often say, oh, I should do that. I should do that. Yeah, you should do it, actually. Take out a piece of paper at the end of the day and write one thing you're grateful for. It doesn't have to be like some big thing. And it's so powerful. And it just gets into your mind, and you just realize it brings perspective to things and how fortunate so many of us are in this life. And so there you have it. There are all 10.
I love that, and I feel like I owe someone at my bank an apology now.
Was there a little edge the other day or something?
I told you in the pre-show that we're remodeling a house just out of New York City, and so
Yes. Yeah.
in advance, I cut our contractor a bunch of checks, all for the same amount, and just said deposit these whenever you want, basically, right? Basically, like a
Yep.
draw against the work. And so I think he put three of them through in a 2 day time period, and it probably looked weird. They're all the same amount. They're all, it almost looks like duplicates or something.
Right.
Apparently, the bank tried to call me, but the number didn't pop up as the bank, so I'm not going to answer an unknown phone call. And the checks bounced. So I was, needless to
Oh
say,
my
not thrilled.
God.
And I'm on with the bank, and the poor person at the bank. Again, I wasn't treating them like an equal, though. I was like, I was coming from a place of significance, and do you know how much money I have in there with you guys? And
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed, and da 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 da, and I did kind of throw in, I know it's not your fault, but it's very frustrating, kind of thing. But at the same time,
Yeah.
there was probably a better way to handle that. I don't know if I was coming from a complete place of consciousness in that moment.
I love that. You know what I love about you and that story, which is so beautiful? And someone shared this with me recently. The most humble people are super vulnerable. And so, for your
Thank you.
ability to just notice that and bring that up and bring that story to light is so wonderful. So thank you for that. It's
It's
amazing.
literally just so fresh. It was like,
Yeah.
maybe 14 hours ago that happened. So thank you, though. And Rob, an hour went by super fast with
Yeah,
you. And
Ken, thank you.
thank you. And I appreciate you. I think I'm going to have a better vacation, and certainly, if not a better life from having met you. I appreciate all the work that you're doing. And I'm sure this won't be the last time that we see each other.
I hope so. I hope so. Thanks so much, Ken. I really appreciate you. You do amazing work.
Thank you, sir. Have an awesome weekend.
You too.
All right. Bye.